So now we'll start our first block of for presentation that will focus on modeling work and in different spatial management strategies and different case study in European Sea. So apologize in advance to our speaker if I might mispronounce your name, sorry. Probably Isabella is the only way that I can say it in the right way. So our first speaker will be Logan Beach. And is going to talk about projecting and consistent impact of spatial development and climate pressure using osmosis. It's a long.
Perfect pronunciation.
This one, if you want.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Logan Binch. I'm a PhD candidate at Wageningen University in Research, and I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you my work where I've been projecting impacts of spatial developments and climate pressures in the North Sea socio-ecological system. So, as I'm sure you've heard much of already, and you'll probably hear more of today, we're facing increasing temperatures. And what that means is we're looking at changes in fish biomass distributions and potentially species range shifts as well. And with a growing global population, these effects are only going to be exacerbated. So that growing global population brings about an increased demand for services and resources, so transport, energy, and food. And the North Sea is already extremely densely utilized. And all these effects are anthropogenic, and it's been termed an anthropogenic sea. And all of these kind of services have an effect disturbing the natural processes and functions of the system. And to kind of alleviate some of these pressures that we put on the natural system, we can implement marine protected areas. And you've already heard that the UN has a 30 by 30, whereby they want 30% MPA coverage by the year 2030. And on top of this, offshore wind farms add additional spatial complexity to management. And so what this necessitates is ecosystem-based approaches to assess these kind of effects. And one thing that we can use to do this is modeling. So what we use is an osmosis model. So osmosis is a food web dynamic model that's spatially and temporally explicit. And it's really good in the way that it represents fish in a kind of logical way. We use a concept called super individuals to do this. And a super individual can be seen as akin to a school of fish, whereby every individual that constitutes a super individual is exactly identical. And we represent these mechanistic processes. So natural mortality, you will lose some individuals in your super individual. The super individual will forage and predate, but also be predated upon. And then if they reach a critical threshold for consumption, they will grow together. And then based on their size and their selectivity and the mesh, the métier that catches them, there'll be fish immortality. And finally, they will reproduce to create new super individuals. For our scenarios, what we're looking at is climate and spatial. So firstly, the climate. What we do is we look at RCP 8.5 for the year 2060. And how we implement this in osmosis is through lower trophic level forcing. So we use an ERSEM lower trophic level model. And here you can see on this figure, the relative difference in biomass for 5 different lower trophic level groups. Between the year 2016 and 2018. So anything that's shifting towards the red is a relative localized increase in this biomass, and anything shifting towards the blue is a relative loss in biomass. And I think, as you can see, there's a lot of loss of biomass across these groups. And additional to that, to incorporate some of this economic stuff, we look at RCP 8.5. I forget the name of the scenario, sorry, but essentially what it leads to is a 2.89% increase annually of fuel price, 37.5% fuel efficiency, and 1.67% increase in fish price. And what that really comes out to between those 2 years, so 42 years into the future, is a doubling of fish price and a doubling of your cost of fuel with this fuel efficiency taken into account. And now for the spatial scenario. So previously, the model that I was working with really just represented fishing in the way of a back-calculated F. And it had very, very crude spatial and temporal kind of representation. So what I worked to do is really represent fishing activity in the way of métiers. And we identified 14 métiers that made some significant contribution with a 5% threshold to our target species that were already in the model. And for the spatial scenarios, we're looking at MPA implementation and offshore wind farms. And what we're saying is that bottom trawlers are excluded from MPAs and offshore wind farms in the future, and that pelagic fishing gears will only be excluded from the offshore wind farms. And we can see that the effort change applied is quite high for some métiers, quite low for some others. And how that looks like spatially, so this is a representation of the box is a little bit bigger here, but it's the OTB depth 100 to 119 millimeters, so the one in the center. And it has a good spatial representation. It's used quite broad over the North Sea. And we use 3 different spatial scenarios. So a boundary scenario can be seen as fish in the line, where fishing effort is taken from inside of these closed areas and displaced to the nearest neighboring cells. Proportional effort redistribution proportionally redistributes the effort to all other active areas, and a reduction in effort can be seen as taking that effort away and not redistributing it. And to account for some indicators in the model, we're really trying to move towards representing economics and social factors better. So we try to quantify or represent the cost of fishing at the métier level, and it's very hard to do, and it doesn't really exist. So what we had to do is kind of combine fleet segment kind of classifications for cost of fishing activity and apply that to the métiers through this process. You can see the Sankey diagram, how the flow through of the fleet segment characteristics go towards these métier activities. And that allowed us to be able to quantify costs at a métier level. So the cost of doing this fishing activity in the North Sea area for the different métiers. And on the other side of that, we also need to take into account revenue. So we looked at the species-specific, métier-specific, and quota combinations for the value of fish. And so just some really short results, still a work in progress, but what we represent here is the change in the higher trophic level biomass, so off fish biomass under these scenarios. So I think, as you can see, it's a real it's a log relative graph again. So anything shifting towards blue is a relative loss, and anything shifting towards red is a relative increase. And I think, as you can see, especially off the north east coast of Scotland and the UK, is really dark blue areas corresponding to where the lower trophic level biomass is lost. And anything shifted towards red is a relative increase. So under our spatial scenarios, the last 3, you can see a little bit of a shift in pink color, especially inside the Big Dogger Bank MPA. To look at species-specific stuff, what we did was group our species based on attributes from the OSPAR indicator database, based on ecotype and feeding guild classifications. And this is kind of what we looked at for our species specifically. We look at change in biomass, the proportion of mature individuals, and the typical length. And as you can see, if we look at this top row, you can see that there's a loss in biomass across all of our scenarios. And if we just dive in very specifically here for the demersal benthivorous species, so that's a flatfish, dab, plaice, and sole, we see that under a climate scenario, they really suffer. So it's a relative loss of around 10% in biomass. And the same is seen for proportion of mature individuals. We have less mature and less larger under the typical length, less larger individuals. But when we alleviate some of this fishing pressure under the reduction scenario, we see a kind of an opposite reaction, even under the climate change. So we see that they actually benefit a little, and they have more mature individuals and more larger individuals. And then for the economic side, what we were able to do is represent the value per unit effort of the fishing activities. So this is just the bottom trawling activities to get that nice contrast between our closed areas and the other areas where the fishing is taking place. And again, this is on a log scale, but now it's centered at 2x, which represents that change in fish price in the future. So anything shifting towards blue can be seen as a relative loss or a lesser value per unit effort. Anything shifting towards red is an increase. And under our climate scenario, everything's a real pale blue color. And then that's kind of exacerbated under boundary and proportional, whereby the localized effort in where fishing is taking place is more intense. So, and they're not catching enough to make up for that. So their value per unit effort is decreasing further. But under a reduction of effort scenario, what we see is that there are benefits even outside of these areas. So where the fishing pressure is the same in these areas under the reduction scenario, we're seeing a benefit. The value per unit effort is increasing. And then, yeah, apologies for the super horrible figure. It's still a work in progress. But yeah, what I was looking at is the TBB depth 70 to 99 metier here. So that is the metier that's targeting the sole. And what we're able to see here is that the climate and boundary and proportional scenarios for our social economic metrics are quite similar. So the effort here, the overall effort, does not change. So the fuel cost does not change between these scenarios. It increases in line with the increase in costs. But the real difference comes with the reduction scenario, whereby we can see that the value per unit effort that they're getting is much greater, and their overall fuel cost is lesser than previous. Well, I'll just finish up very quickly. So what we see is that climate effects are likely to dominate over these spatial ones if the overall effort remains the same. And the spatial closures are able to alleviate some of these climate effects. And we do see, especially inside of these closed areas, some benefits to the fish. Reducing effort can be beneficial for some métiers if we're looking purely at a value per unit effort perspective. And yeah, finally, the social economic considerations are really required. And what we admit to is that we're looking at very rudimentary kind of scenarios, but in a dynamic system, we would have to take into account how the fishes would react to this. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. So we hold question for the end of this block of presentation, as for the other day. So we call our next speaker, Irida Maina, who will talk about evaluating fishery management scenario for the Eastern Ionian Sea.
So thank you very much. I will present you the work done so far for the Eastern Ionian Sea using the displaced model. The work is done in the framework of Seawise project as part of the Work Package 5 on spatial management impacts. Displace is a dynamic individual-based spatially explicit bioeconomic model. Is used to evaluate the biological, economic, energy efficiency impacts and other ecosystem effects of various fisheries management options under different climatic conditions. So the approach takes into account the fishing effort displacement effect and captures the individual variability in fishers' behavior. So we are aiming to construct an application that fits as possible the complexity of the fisheries ecological system in the area. And so several data have been incorporated in the parameterization, such as the distribution of fishing effort, the species abundance, both for commercial and non-commercial species, the biological traits of fish stocks, and various fisheries-related and economic factors. So very quickly, I will give you more information about the input datasets that have been used. First, we use the quarterly based spatial distribution of fishing effort for 5 fishing fleets. We have seen some seasonal differences in fishing activities, so that's why we are trying to do that. Just to say that all Greek trawlers and purseaners are equipped with vessel positioning systems, and their analysis was based on VMS data. But the majority of the fleet, of Greek fleet, is lower than 12 meters, and are not equipped with monitoring devices. So giving you some numbers, in the area we have 30 trawlers, 40 purseaners, and over than 3,000 small-scale vessels. And for this reason, fishing effort for gillnets, rammelnets, and long lines was estimated by quarter after applying an extended version of a multi-criteria decision analysis using open source data like environmental fleet register and estimations from STCF fisheries dependent information. So for producing the necessary spatial temporal information for these fleets, we have developed a dedicated R package called Tools for MCD. The code is open in GitHub, and we're preparing some manuals and examples regarding that. Also, the spatial distribution of abundance for the 6 important commercial species was incorporated by semester in this place. The distribution of fit species was obtained by GAMS, not single GAMS, but conditioned with dedicated smoothers that providing models flexible enough to elaborate predictions on a year-quarter basis. Different models were applied for small, medium, and large individuals in order to capture any effect and the spatial variation along with the growth of individuals. As I said, 6 commercial species were modeled and incorporated in the model, but here we focus on the 3 most important for the area, which is hake, mullus barbatus, and deepwater rose shrimp. We have also incorporated selected vulnerable species called as bycatch. We are focusing on elasmobrads, and also climate projections for all the above species have been performed based on the RPC 85 climate scenarios. So also detailed information about vessels' characteristics by port, such as catch rates, vessel and speed and trip characteristics, have also been considered in the model to better capture fisher choices and behavior. Other information is related to stock biological parameters and traits, prices data, selectivity of guides by stock and metier and benthic habitats. The last is currently ongoing. All these are integrated in the model to better support the bioeconomic analysis. So after all this, preliminary simulations were first performed to calibrate the Ionian Sea application and evaluate if the model is able to mimic the input data. The final setting from this process is the baseline, the status quo scenario. Just to say that this is an agent-based model and about 3,600 vessels were simulated here. 6 alternatives then were tested and compared with the baseline scenario. Those are, for example, restricting trawl in the Natura 2000 areas and on all MPAs. These 2 scenarios were aspired by the EU Action Plan, and during the Eurasian conference, Greece has provided certain political commitments related particularly to these 2 scenarios. Other 4 scenarios were also tested, which are on spatiotemporally restricting trawl on hake nurseries. Also, we have tested a combined scenario of restricting trawl from hake nurseries and a small overall fishing effort reduction for all fishing years. And another scenario to consider the effects of climate change based on the extreme RCP scenario. And also restricting trawl for sensitive areas for benthos. We have considered here benthic communities with longevity lower than 10 years. So this scenario were coming more based on the work performed during Seawise project and under the concept of protective sensitive species and habitats. So the scenarios outcome when then are created with a base and compared with a baseline after a 10-year simulation period for certain fishing, trip, economic, and biological indicators. Okay, these are some example outcomes comparing the alternative scenarios with the baseline. The maps on the right shows an example of relative change in accumulated landings, spatial outcomes on other indicators like fishing effort, unwanted catch, and indicating and displacement effect in certain scenarios, particularly in central and occasionally in the northern part of the area. The displacement effect is also varied by species. As an example, in the combined scenario of a nursery ban and a small overall fishing effort reduction, the spatial distribution of catches were reduced in overall, while remained higher in productive areas and in areas close to closures. And also in another scenario of a trawl ban in all MPAs, the impacted vessels increased their catches in the productive fishing grounds and close to the banned areas. Here is an example comparison of aggregated outcomes on certain indicators for large. We have separated here just for showing for large and small-scale fisheries for the 10th simulated year. As an example, the combined scenario of closing nurseries and at the same time applying effort control showed lower landings, but also showed lower unwanted catch and bycatch. Fishing effort fuel consumption were also lower, but this affected also the economic performance for certain vessels. While the ban in all MPAs showed lower catch and unwanted catch of hake, but bycatch was higher. And although fishing effort was higher, economic performance was lower, so this is not so good, I think. Related to SSB and fishing mortality for commercial stocks, the ban of trout in benefited hake, as we expect, while the combined scenario benefited also other species like Mulus barbatus, let's say. However, other scenarios didn't show any noticeable changes, or some scenarios negatively affect the commercial stocks. So the reality is more complex than this, but I have tried to summarize and conclude in some simple conclusions. So the ban of troll in the Natura 2000 area showed a little impact on total catches and fisheries economics, but offered minimal benefits to the species. Also, the troll ban in all MPAs indicated the fishing effort displacement effect to productive areas and increased bycatch and reducing economic performance. And restricting trolling in sensitive benthic areas, and we're talking about deeper grounds, had minimal impacts on catches, bycatch, and fisheries economics, but effects to deeper water species and benthos effects require further study. It is something that we are working on. Also, the troll ban in hake nurseries benefited hake, but therefore was slightly increased and displaced in other areas. The combined scenario on troll ban in hake nurseries and at the same time performing a small fishing effort reduction was the most beneficial for conserving targeted and bycatch species. But our results showed that any effectiveness was affected by potential extreme climate change, as showed in our scenario 5. However, the effectiveness of the above scenario depends also on the monitoring and controlling fishing activity. This is an issue for small-scale fisheries in our area. And also considering potential climate impacts, while as shown from changes occurred during a 10-year simulation period, scenario evaluation needs regular testing for accounting possible changes that affect their effectiveness. So based on this work, we can see that spatiotemporal dynamics, also climate change, and of course, effort displacement effect are critical for achieving sustainable socioeconomic and environmental goals, and also to support operational ecosystem-based management. And our ongoing work is targeted on further investigating the potential ecosystem effects of management option on endangered, on bycatch species, and on benthos. So we are working on that this period. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. So our next speaker will be Isabella Bitetto from the COISPA, and she will talk about bioeconomic spatial modeling, evaluation of viable management measures in Central Mediterranean Sea.
Thank you very much, Maria. Good morning, everyone. In this presentation, I will present you some of the work we have carried out within Seawise project, with a focus on the development and application of a bioeconomic spatial model to support the evaluation of spatial management in the Central Mediterranean Sea, and specifically in the Adriatic Sea and Western Ionian Sea. As we know, spatial management plays a key role in improving the exploitation pattern of commercial stocks, in particular if the closures overlap essential fish habitat such as nurseries and spawning grounds, they can actually help a lot the stocks to recover. Moreover, closures can be also designed to protect hotspots of bycatch species, and in this case, of course, help and contribute to reduce the fishing pressures on these endangered, threatened, and protected species as well. And but in particular, my presentation will focus on the impact of spatial management on the target stocks. Our study focuses on the Adriatic and Western Ionian Seas. Notably, the Adriatic is the region in Mediterranean more productive and overfished, with the demersal stocks declining since 20 years. This decline triggered specific management actions from the GFCM, and among them, there are, of course, fisheries restricted area. The result is that the Adriatic is one of Mediterranean subregions with the highest percentage of fishery restricted areas. And to evaluate the impact of spatial measures, explicit spatial bioeconomic models, including climate change, can be the appropriate tool. To explore new spatial management options, in Seawise we developed a novel modeling framework, a spatial extension of the BEM tool bioeconomic model called the Spatial BEM tool. And we considered the target stocks that are in the management plans in the study areas, focusing on the Italian fleets and the main port. Spatial BEM tool so integrates biological, ecological, and economic dimensions. It is spatially explicit and incorporates both species distribution layers developed in another work package of the Seawise project, including also projections under climate change, and integrating also fleet dynamics based on fishing communities and behavioral adaptation, so the human dimensions that was cited in our presentation, for example. This slide show how the model population spatial dynamics and integrate them into the bioeconomic simulations. Where are available, we use the distribution layers for juveniles and adult from Seawise GAM model, while if this distinction of layers was not available, we used the overall distribution. We model fisher behavior through two types, categorizing the fisher behavior in two types. The specialists who minimize the fuel costs and stay close their own port, and the switchers who seek to maximize their profit by targeting high revenue areas, and so they tend to go also far away from the home port. To model the impact on the spatial distribution of the stock, of course, we needed to spatialize also the fishing pressure, and in particular the component of the fleet, the different vessels have been divided in fleet units, and for each fleet unit is associated, each fleet unit is divided in fishing communities, and for each fishing community is associated a specific fisher behavior, so specialists and switcher, as I said before. Of course, these communities differ in behavior and response to management, which is critical for realistically simulating the effort reallocation of the fleet. The model evaluates different management scenarios, simulating for each of them how the effort is redistributed. So we considered the baseline as reference scenario. We combined it with this baseline also closures already in place and new proposed closures that we have identified in Seawise. Then we have an FMSY scenario that is based on the FMSY of Hake and is implemented in line with the management plan in the Adriatic Sea through effort quotas. And then we have a trade-off scenario less severe for the fleet, that is the pretty good deal scenario. And we combine also these two scenarios with the new closures. The closures that we defined are aimed at protecting a nursery area out of Roccella in the GSA 19, and also to protect the nursery areas of Wake close to the Frau Jabuka Pomo pit, and also in the eastern part of the southern Adriatic, where there is another area quite important to protect juveniles of deep-water shrimp and lake. Okay, so let me give you just a couple of examples of simulations results. In the southern Adriatic, the recently established Otranto channel and the 800 1,000 meters frac closures have minimal impact on the Italian fleet in terms of fuel consumption. This is due to the fact that less than 1% of their effort was previously deployed in this area. But in the Western Ionian Sea, the situation is more nuanced. Vessels, smaller vessels under 18 meters operating in the central part of the GSA 19 are again marginally affected, but for bigger vessels over 18 meters, in particular, which accounts for about 22% of the red shrimp fishing mortality, have up to 15% of their effort deployed in the new proposed closure areas. And these vessels represent the 80% of the trawler fleet in this region. So we also see in our results a change also in the exploitation pattern with improved size at first catch of about 1 millimeter. Interestingly, our simulation showed that the impact on fuel consumption depends on the area and the fishing community. For example, there are fishing community for which we observe an increase in the fuel cost respect to other fleets that have a decrease in fuel costs because the closure area are more close to their own port and they need to go far away from their own port. As a general consideration, implementing the reduction based on FMSY leads to a reduction in fuel use, primarily because it implies, of course, a lower overall fishing effort. This has both economic and environmental benefits, contributing also to the decarbonization of the fleet. To summarize, the Spatial BEM tool model developed in Seawise provides a robust tool for evaluating the effectiveness and trade-offs of spatial closures, and also allowed to answer to some key questions. The first one is which fishing communities are more impacted, so allowing also to answer the impact on the human dimension, how much these fishing communities are impacted, and how the closure modify the exploitation pattern for the target stocks. In the Adriatic, we observed that effort reduction under the current multi-annual plan are still needed in combination with existing FRAs. While in the Western Ionian Sea, the proposed deep water closure may lead to effort displacement, which could increase the pressure, so shift the pressure from deep water to the demersal resources like cake, for example, and red mullet. Looking ahead, we aim to extend this modeling framework because in this application we only considered Italian vessels. So we are planning to also include other Mediterranean countries and integrate further climate and socioeconomic scenarios to improve the robustness of fisheries management advice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Isabella. And our last speaker is Jean-Noël Dron from the Georesent Center. He will talk about a spatial temporal decision tool for fisheries, starting with bycatch mitigation.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce this rather simple decision tool for fishers, directly addressed to the fishers. So it started with the the fact that spatial environmental data and species presence or abundance data are more and more available and accurate, where species habitat can be derived in real time with a sufficient precision to efficiently inform the fisheries. And actually, some communities of fisheries are asking for such developments. So it is work in progress. At the moment, we're assembling the multi-species habitat, but there will be further layers to be added in the future to develop further this tool. So I will first try to announce the fact that ocean productivity is highly dynamic, and I will illustrate this with a generic index of ocean productivity available to fish, focusing on the frequency of chlorophyll fronts from satellite, ocean color. And then we'll switch to more like species-specific habitat and the assembling of these protected or targeted species habitat to build up a more elaborated mitigation of bycatch. And future development then in the third part for completing these decision tools, assembling all the useful information at métier level to be useful to decide where and when to go at sea. So first, this ocean productivity index available to fish, which is called OPFISH, is a product that has been developed at the GRC. What you see on the left-hand side is the frequency and intensity of chlorophyll fronts, which are been confronted to mesozooplankton biomass in the North Atlantic using continuous plankton recorder data, but also has been confronted to spatial fisheries data in Europe, commercial and scientific surveys. So on the left-hand side, you see the distribution of what we can call the potential fish production as it relates to the relative level of zooplankton productivity. It is highly variable in latitude, but also in time. You can see that over the last 2 decades, there's been some oscillations of the global ocean productivity, which most of it is likely to be natural, and except 2024, which is a particularly low level in that time series. On the right-hand side, it's a trend map over the last 2 decades. So green reflects positive trend of ocean productivity, and purple reflects negative trend. This is translating the differences, regional differences of stratification by warming of the upper ocean on one hand versus intensified vertical mixing by wind, for instance, on the other hand. So you can see that even for the last 20 years, there's not been like a major trend except the last year. Regionally, there's like strong impact of current effect of climate change in the ocean productivity that is available to fish. If we zoom in our area of interest in Europe, you can see, of course, the latitudinal gradient of productivity that is occurring also between the shelf area and offshore. Some oscillations also along this 20 years period. And the trend map also emphasized largely negative anomaly in the southern Europe seas, and mostly positive anomaly in some areas of the northern part, but also in longitude, there's some contrasted trends in the Northeast Atlantic. So ocean productivity is changing due to natural climate variability, such as sun radiation with a cycle of 11 years. El Nino, La Nina is also more irregular and influencing the productivity at the global scale. But most of the anthropogenic influence relates to changes in water temperature and the conflicting, let's say, effect of intensified stratification versus vertical mixing. So eutrophication is another element in the coastal environment that is influencing productivity, available to fish again, and precipitation regimes and extreme river outflows may also largely influence this coastal environment. Acidification is another long-term effect that is also affecting productivity. So the habitat of target versus bycatch or unwanted catches is highly dynamic, and this dynamics is increasing over time with the increasing effect of climate change. So we are developing this tool as additional knowledge of the fishers to better inform them on where to fish. And this is what we're going to see now. An example of a monospecific tool first. This is the detection in real time of the nurseries of hake in the Mediterranean Sea in reddish colors. That can be also sent to, I mean, it's available on our websites since 2016, also in the format and Google Earth format in order to be able to zoom in your area of interest. Another example is the blue shark mitigation tool. We've been developing a 5 classes habitat of global scale of blue sharks in size and sex, and in those maps were assembled all the 3 most vulnerable classes of blue shark, the juveniles and the females, by month, in order to inform on where to avoid fishing to catch those most vulnerable stages. Sorry. So we showed that we avoiding from 16 to 24% of among the months of the global ocean, you end up with a potential protection efficiency which is higher of about 32%. So then we combine those habitat together, target and wanted protected species, and we assign a weighting factor between those habitats that is depending on the management objectives. And that's the great, let's say, input of this approach. I think and here's an example of bluefin as a target species and blue shark as these vulnerable stages of blue shark as a bycatch species. And here we show an example of weighting factors of both habitats, and that has to be decided ideally within a co-decision process with the stakeholders in order to favor acceptance. And of course, when you're modifying those weighting factors, the maps are changing. So this can be embedded in a more global spatial planning of fisheries, which could be very dynamic and mostly divided within 2 layers, pelagic and demersal benthic layer, with its own specificities where biodiversity hotspots, for instance, could be inserted. So to conclude, This decision tool for fisheries at métier level is being developed for two showcases: long line targeting bluefin, and bycatch is blue shark, and the other is bottom trawling targeting deepwater rose shrimp, and nephrops with bycatch is undersized hake. We will be adding some other layers, and if you have any available, you're most welcome to contact me. On some other choke species, for instance, or biodiversity hotspot, but also information in real time on the fish price that can double from 1 month to the other, or the fuel price is also an important factor of expense for the fishermen. Indication of distance to port for the favorable fishing grounds is also an important factor. There are some other spatial human infrastructure that could be added, as well as other layers like weather and sea state. So this research contributes to enhancing the spatial management for EBFM within the framework of maritime spatial planning, that is aiming to reduce bycatch, protect sensitive species and habitats, reducing also CO2 emissions, and increasing socioeconomic benefits of fishermen in agreement with the principle of fishing less but fishing better. It also has strengthened the fisher scientists collaboration, the mutual understanding and trust that is necessary for an effective communication with the stakeholders. Thank you. So all the data is available for anyone if needed.
Thank you, Jean-Noel. We welcome our speaker on the stage.